Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the One Team Inertia podcast. We're back to episode 1 after our failed attempt last season at trying to get it going. We're going to try again this year, and as the title of the episode suggests, new beginnings both for ourselves and for the club as well as we look towards a new season. And plenty to talk about this evening. Lots of things going on as we get moving towards the start of the 23-24 season. Alongside my esteemed colleagues, as always, Andrew Milligan and Kieran Calderwood. Andrew, glad the season's over, but lots to look forward to, I'm sure, moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a long season, wasn't it? And one which we weren't sure how it would end. Really, really nervous at times throughout the season, but thankfully we got over the line in the end with a few good performances post split. So as you said there, all eyes ahead of next season now, and a bit more excitement certainly than we had coming into this season, and perhaps more of a rebuild over the summer, and we can see a bit more of an improvement going into next season.
Absolutely, Kieran. Obviously, we were in the commentary box for almost every home game, or every home game certainly last year, and it was tough at times, but just glad to get over the line, and now we can look towards a second consecutive year back in the Premiership.
Well, definitely. And first of all, I feel honoured that you've called me esteemed. I'll take that to the bank, that one. But I'm very glad that that season's over with. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. There were some high moments, but there was a majority of low ones, which was to be expected. We were coming into it as championship champions. Still very much, you're probably like an 80% championship team. Not high expectations, but even at that, I think just skimming it was perhaps below expectations. I don't know if that's maybe a bit far fetched to say, but in my own opinion, I thought we would have done a little bit better. But I'm obviously happy that we survived.
Yeah. It was obviously a tough season, as we know. If anyone listened to our commentary throughout the season, it wasn't the happiest at times, but we made it work, and we're starting afresh today, so we're not thinking back too much to last season. We'll move forward, and lots to talk about, as we say. So we'll start off with the squad list reveal. Obviously, we had to wait quite a while for it. A lot of clubs having theirs out the couple of days after the season finished, a couple of weekends ago, but we had to wait a wee while, but we've finally come out and we've got sort of four main categories to go. We've had a couple of updates since the initial list came out, but we'll read through them and we'll take them one stage at a time. So the players remain under contract for next year. Some of them we knew already. Some of them we've obviously got that we didn't know and have come in the last couple of weeks. Signed new contracts. We got Danny Armstrong, Fraser Murray, which was a surprise. We'll come on to that. Kerr McKinroy, Rory McKenzie, Joe Wright, Kyle Vassell, David Watson, Bobby Wales, Stephen Warnock, and Innes Cameron. And since then, we've also had Brad Lyons, the only one so far to have re-signed, but there are still others in discussions, including Ash Taylor, Liam Polworth, Jack Sanders, Sam Walker, and Liam Donnelly. So, Andrew, I think everyone was fairly set on who they wanted to see remain, who they wanted to see get new contracts. Probably the one standout there would be Fraser Murray, a bit of a controversial one. There was some rumours that contract was already done and dusted before the Celtic game, because you feel that if the contract had offered, or if they'd been thinking about a contract after the Celtic game, he may well not have got it because that didn't go too well for him, did it?
Well, that is a bizarre thing, isn't it? We haven't seen him since that day against Celtic, where he, it's safe to say didn't have a great performance that day. But even if you are to assume that the contract was signed before, then you do have to wonder on what basis that was signed on, because I mean, certainly this season, very little game time for him, and any time he has, he certainly struggled to impress. But I mean, maybe perhaps he can find the form that he found in the Championship season next season. Perhaps I've seen a lot of people. Um, perhaps hoping that there'll be some sort of Danny Armstrong like performance next season, where all of a sudden out of nowhere after a poor season he's all of a sudden in the team every week and having great performances. So hopefully he can have that sort of spark next season. But it certainly was a surprise for myself, and I'm sure practically every Kelly fan who read that article last week, reading that he had signed a new 2-year deal. It was certainly an eyebrow raising one, but hopefully one that he proves not to be a mistake from the club.
Yeah, it was a strange one, wasn't it, Kieran? Because obviously, you could be fair enough if he played his part during the season and he was just going to be a sort of like a second choice winger, or if he can play that that fullback role, obviously in a back five, and he'd put in some good performances here and there, and he'd be a good squad player. But he's played almost no part this season at all. Very little game time in terms of substitute appearances, and just that one start against Celtic, where he obviously basically scored them 2 goals, and he was given a hard time about it at the Player of the Year dinner a couple of nights later. So it's a very strange one, but obviously Derek McInnes seems to see something in him, and maybe he'll go on loan to another club next year, try and build up his experience and come back again, a new and improved player and ready for the Premiership, just like Danny Armstrong's done this year.
Well, yeah, that would be the kind of hope that you think. And also, you're both saying it's quite a confusing one. The only kind of explanation you can really come up with is either that Derek McInnes does see something in him for the long run, because he was great for us in the Championship. Like, he played week in, week out. It was a shock, I think, for everyone when Danny Armstrong all of a sudden just came bouncing out from the bench, and there you go, he's replaced Fraser Murray. What's this? Fraser Murray was our star player. What's happened to him? And then you see the downfall of him. You can't really blame it all on him as well. Like, he was barely getting played. He was barely getting brought on. He wasn't getting used in the slightest. And then he gets brought on in the Celtic game. Um, and obviously, we know what happened. We don't need to go over it. It was not a very good afternoon for anyone involved, unless you're of the Celtic persuasion, which obviously none of us are. But hopefully, we see a bit of a revival. I imagine with Jordan Jones's loan being expired, you were mentioning as well, Adam. He can play left back as well as he can play left wing. He's quite a utility player when it comes to the wing department, so he can play probably on the left or the right if you fancy. So he's not the worst player in the world to have as a backup, especially when I know we're only just starting the transfer window, but we've not really seen any action in the midfield to attacking department just yet. So an extra name on that roster, hopefully get a bit of game time under his belt with Jones being gone now. Because if you look at it, who else do we really have on the wings? You've got Rory McKenzie and Danny Armstrong. Really, there's no one else there. So hopefully a bit of a resurgence for Fraser Murray.
Absolutely, and as we're doing the podcast, as we said, Brad Lyons signed a new 2-year deal just yesterday, and then still in discussions with the club. We believe Ash Taylor, Liam Polworth, Jack Sanders, Sam Walker, and Liam Donnelly. Andrew, are those players that you would all, you were happy to try and take back for next year, or did any of them surprise you? Some people were saying, Ash Taylor, they thought maybe that was his time up. They thought he might even retire. Liam Donnelly, he's been in and out of good form, injured a lot. So and obviously Jack Sanders very highly rated by the Kilmarnock support, as is Sam Walker. So bit of a mixed bag in there. But would you be happy to take them all back next year if obviously the contract situations work out?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it is really just an unknown at the time in terms of what our squad's going to look at this, and come pre-season really, basically, because as you said, there we're still waiting on quite a few names to determine whether they will be staying with us next season or if they'll be leaving us. And obviously, as you said, we've already got Brad Lyons, which I think is a good one to get across the line. Certainly one that I'm sure no Kilmarnock fans would have expected a few months ago. But I think he really showed his quality, in that post-split fixtures. Firstly off the bench, and then after David Watson's suspension, in from the start. So I was happy to see him sign a new 2-year deal. But I think those other players, I think they've all got. I don't think there's any eyebrow raisers. I think Fraser Murray was certainly out of the ones offered / already extended their contract. Fraser Murray was certainly the one causing the most surprise. I think Ash Taylor, as you said, probably the one out of that group is potentially the most surprising. Certainly seen past a few points this season. In and out of the team a lot more than he was in that second half of last season. But the rest, I think, we've got to try and keep. A Sam Walker, especially. I mean, how difficult is it to get a decent goalkeeper these days? And I say it's safe to say Sam Walker wasn't the goalkeeper we're expecting to be starting for us practically every league game last season. It certainly was when we got Zach Hyman back on loan. We were expecting him to have the number one shirt again, but obviously things worked out a bit differently. But Sam Walker came in and saved us a lot of goals in a lot of different games last season. And Polworth and Donnelly in midfield, I think both had mixed bag of performances over the season, but I think in a whole, there'll be useful people to try and hold on to. So hopefully, we're able to get those contract renewals across the line, but obviously time will tell on that one, and hopefully we find out sooner rather than later so we can start focusing on new arrivals more than contract renewals.
Absolutely. Well, we'll come on to our first new arrival in just a second, but Kieran, obviously a lot of players leaving basically half the team or perhaps even more than that. Departing upon completion of their contract, so basically not offered a new contract. Alan Power, Blair Olsen, Chris Stokes, Scott Robinson, Callum Waters, Lee Hodgson, and Dylan McGowan. I assume I don't think a lot of Kelly fans have any real qualms with any of them. I don't think any of them have really hit the heights that we wanted them to. Obviously, Chris Stokes coming in as captain didn't really get going for him. Scott Robinson was disappointing. Obviously, a very bad injury record as well. Alan Power, I think his time was up. We're sort of looking to start afresh and just having these kind of guys about the club maybe doesn't scream that. Likewise, Blair Olsen, Lee Hodgson, Callum Waters, Dylan McGowan, probably not Premiership players. You have to say you'd imagine they'll move down to the Championship or perhaps lower and look for a club there. Seem to have plenty of suitors, so I assume you don't really have any qualms about them, and obviously wish them all the best, in their next endeavours.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the only one I just said you could maybe raise a slight eyebrow for would be Chris Stokes, but that's like kind of once in a blue moon that he pulls out a performance that makes you think, maybe he's not like that bad. But most of his time is this thing. A lot of our expectations and like kind of seeing of these players was seeing them in the championship against teams that are nowhere near the quality that you're getting in the Premiership.
Yeah.
So it's a bit hard to try and transfer their good performances into Premiership games. So that's been quite an evident one with Chris Stokes. I don't really know if there's any other players that's been let go that you can really say that about. But Chris Stokes is the one name that kind of sticks out to me where I could have perhaps seen the merit in keeping him around because he did have a big benefit in those last couple of games
Yeah,
when he was
it's that
essentially
leadership
forced in.
quality as well, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
that he obviously
yeah.
had. We made captain when he hadn't even played a game for the club right at the start of the Championship season, which obviously raised a few eyebrows at the time. But he'll be a big miss in the dressing room, but perhaps not out on the pitch. I don't think it's too unkind to say.
Probably the best way to put it.
Yeah,
He always
absolutely.
seemed like a good character.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And obviously, a big list of loans returning to their parent clubs: Jordan Jones, Lewis Mayo, Luke Chambers, Zach Kevin, Ben Cresceni, Kristen Doidge, Ryan Alabiosu, and Jero Dorset. Andrew, it's just a sort of case of for some of these players just not getting going again. The likes of Jordan Jones didn't really get much of a chance. Zach Kevin, of course, we know failed to sort of live up to the Premiership standard. Alabiosu, good at the start and fell off. And Dorset, good in spells, but never really got a proper run in the team. So you're looking at the players you'd want back. I would imagine, Lewis Mayo, definitely, if we can try and get him, unlikely to be on another loan, you'd think we'd have to try and buy him. And I know that discussions have been had on that, but the price seems a bit high at the moment from what Rangers are asking. And obviously Luke Chambers as well. We'd love to have him back, wouldn't we? But likely to go out on loan somewhere in England after signing a long new deal with Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly. It was certainly a mixed bag when it came to loan deals last season. Too many for probably everyone's liking. To be fair, what it was about 8 loans was it last season, 7 or 8 at least.
Yeah.
Too many loans for starters. I think or Derek McInnes has already identified that for next season with like really only 2 or 3 next season. But it's not been the first time a manager said we want less loans, and then we've ended up with over half a dozen anyway. So we'll wait and
Yeah.
see on that one. But in terms of the loans last season, I think obviously, as you say, Luke Chambers definitely the standout in that group. I mean, I think at the end of the January transfer window, we were all quite disappointed with the moves we'd made. Only getting Luke Chambers and Kel Vassell over the line, but obviously, I mean, the impact those two players had on our final second half of the season really proved to be crucial in the end. But yeah, top player, and he's going to have a great career ahead of him. A great character as well, shown obviously by him choosing to stay with us instead of heading to the World Cup with England, which he could have easily done. It's not, every time you get, not every player is lucky enough to be able to have that experience. And he was, we were fortunate enough that he turned that down in favor of staying with us for the rest of the season. And I think we'll be forever grateful for that. So obviously, if we could get him back next season, we'd love that. But I think we're all quite realistic about it at the same time that potentially might not happen. And the rest of them, it all really was a mixed bag. I think Dorset had a couple of good games throughout the season, then other games where he looked rather shaky and then had injuries as well. I mean, Doidge, you get what you get with Doidge, don't you? I mean, sometimes up front with Vassell, he looked a decent, number 2 striker, and then other games when he was left up there by himself, he looked like we may as well have nobody up there. And you know, loads of different players as well who just had mixed bags throughout the season. I mean, Zach Henry just said we expected him to, adapt to the Scottish Premiership. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. and plenty of other loans as well that just unfortunately just didn't click throughout the season. I mean, Ryan Albiol said had a great start to the season, then injuries kind of tailed off his season, and when he came back, he wasn't quite the same player. Ben Kerseni was brilliant for us in that first spell of the season, and then he was injured, right until the end, and obviously his England companion Luke Chambers came in and filled in for him. So yeah, a real mixed bag of loans, but a few we won't be sad to see the back of, and a few we will be. But Lewis Mayo, I hope, as you say, we can potentially get him back from Rangers or take him from Rangers altogether. But as you say, if we can get that asking price low enough or not, that'll be another thing to wait and see. But I think Luke Chambers and Lewis Mayo definitely the two standout loanies from last season.
Absolutely, and we'll wait and see if either of them come about again, which would be very beneficial for us, I'm sure. But we'll go our first signing of the summer transfer window, getting our business or some business done early, which is not usually the Kilmarnock way, but we're certainly not going to complain about that. I've got Robbie Dees in from Inverness, 2-year deal, one that had been rumoured for a couple of months now, alongside Docherty at Partick Thistle. That was not yet come about, but could still come. But obviously, a promising young centre back here, and 23 years old, very, very highly rated in Inverness and by Scottish football in general. And you'd imagine quite a coup for Kilmarnock to get him, because I know there's a number of clubs sniffing about him, and he should make a good pairing with whoever happens to be, whether it's Jack Sanders or Joe Wright. One for the future, really, which is not always something that Kilmarnock can get in as their player.
Definitely, it's kind of it's making me think because obviously he's got a bit of pedigree behind him as well, and I feel saying back to this when Kerr McInroy signed for us, I was thinking, oh wow, look at that, that's a player that's really promising.
Yeah.
He's quite young,
So
he's
be
came from a
careful
good
what you
youth
wish for.
academy,
There is maybe the
and
message
then
there.
and then he's just not lived up to it. So I'm excited for it because, as you said, it's not very often that come on and go in for younger players that are not untested, but like they've not been like pushed to the limits in the Premiership. But I don't know. But he's a good player. He's playing for a good Championship side. He went far throughout the competitions that they were involved in this season, and I'm very interested to see how it gets on. But I'll keep my expectations kind of calm for the time being.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's hope he doesn't follow the Kerr McInroy path, or end up at left wing in the first game of the season, or something like that. Knowing Derek McInnes, but yeah, obviously, Andrea, a really positive signing, and in an area that we needed it, and it's just about trying to build on that now and see who else we can get in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was certainly one that was rumoured for a while, wasn't it? But obviously waiting until Inverness's Scottish Cup final had been played last Saturday, and yeah, I mean, certainly, it was certainly a position we needed. We've only got Joe right there at the moment permanently. Obviously, still waiting on Jack Sanders and Ash Taylor in terms of contract renewals, but in terms of the defence at the moment, is just Joe Wright and himself at the moment. So certainly was a position that was needed, and I think certainly not a bad signing by any means. Obviously, can he make that step up to the Premiership? We'll be hoping he can, but certainly experienced enough with Inverness and in the 2 years, 3 years that he's been there. So certainly seems like a good sign, and hopefully a sign of things to come. And as you as you said, Kieran, hopefully not anywhere similar to what we've seen with Kerr McInroy. And maybe have you left that fan club yet, Kieran? Are you still fully on board with it?
Still waving that flag.
It's there. It's on the back burner. We're more David Watson now. David Watson fan club coming along.
You've moved on quickly.
It's not my
Absolutely.
fault. Not my fault.
Absolutely. So for movement on the pitch, we've also had a bit of movement off the park as well, a bit of musical chairs in the Kilmarnock coaching staff. Tony Docherty suddenly leaving out of the blue, really. There wasn't really any rumours about this at all, to take up the manager's job at Dundee. So we obviously wish him well with that. And then that means a bit of rejigging. So Paul Stevenson coming in to be the assistant manager, and then Alan Archibald coming in for Motherwell, and Chris Burke will step up as well into a more senior role in the first team as well. So Kieran, obviously, ashamed to lose Tony Docherty. Obviously, Derek McInnes' right hand man for a very long time, but a good chance for some new faces to come in and show what they're made of.
Definitely, it's that way. It's as much as you're sad to see him go, you wonder, well, now we've got an opportunity to test something else out, and it also brings up this new weird dynamic, kind of like not similar to, but kind of similar story to like a Pep and Arteta kind of situation, the master versus apprentice kind of thing. So the only hope is that Dundee don't beat us next season, and then we get a wee bit of embarrassment that Derek's been turned over by one of his own kind of thing. But yeah, a bit of excitement, as you said, with the new faces and the back benches, and just seeing like, who can bring new ideas, see if there's anything that can be reworked or even just like strengthened upon. Because you notice throughout the season, just there that there are some things that come on that do struggle with differently, and perhaps new faces and new ideas is just what we need, really, more than just like better and bigger players.
I'm sure. I think that's the first time that Pep Guardiola and Mikel Arteta have been compared to Derek McInnes and Tony Docherty. That's for sure. But I get what you mean. I get what you mean. No, brilliant. So that's still the sort of comings and going as of yet. Obviously, there'll be a lot more in the coming weeks, and we'll keep up to date with them as they come in. But today was obviously the or tomorrow or yesterday rather, if you're listening to this on the Friday. Was the group stage draw for the League Cup. Just sort of snuck up on us not long after the season ended. But obviously, a draw we wanted to get some good ties in. Obviously, you want winnable ties. You want to be able to get on to get there and just make sure that you get in the hat for the next round. So you want some good games, but you also want some interesting ties, not going to the same old places. And to be fair, I think the ties we got were difficult and they were also not very exciting because we've been to most of the places before. As Kilmarnock fans. So Kilmarnock were joined in Group F with five clubs, Wraith Rovers and Dunfermline, and then Annan Athletic and Albion Rovers as well. So obviously Wraith and Dunfermline both in the Championship. So one of the harder groups you have to say that have come out having two Championship clubs in there and two of the better Championship clubs. You have to say Wraith Rovers doing a big rebuild job there, and they've made some good signings already. And obviously Dunfermline are going to have the money to try and make a good squad together as well. And obviously not someone that we play very regularly in a ground that I don't think many of us have been to. So hopefully we get them in the away game and we can tick off a new ground. But I do believe it's going to be Albion Rovers and Dunfermline as the two away games. I have actually been to Albion Rovers, not for a Kilmarnock game. I went to see an Albion Rovers game, which don't know why I did that, but
fun fact.
I think I must have been wanting to make myself miserable. But we'll wait and see who gets the home and away ties. But I mean, Andrew, obviously, you just get what comes out of these, but it's so important not to fall at the first hurdle here. And we made it a bit difficult for ourselves in the championship season when we had all those COVID issues, and we ended up losing a couple of games 3-0, and I think we eventually squeaked through, but. It certainly wasn't ideal, so it's good for this one to get off to a strong start, and maybe a good thing that we play harder teams to get us going early rather than playing some easier teams and playing the kids and then you're sort of caught short when the season starts proper.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a difficult competition to start the season with because obviously you're straight into competitive football. Only the top sides get through in every group, and then the fourth best second place teams, of course, as well. So hopefully we can get through. I mean, you would like to hope. I mean, let's be honest, every game is winnable and we should be getting through that group. But certainly could have been an easier group to be drawn in at the same time. Obviously, as you say, two championship sides. I agree with you. I quite like the recruitment that Wraith Rovers have been making so far. They've already got quite a few players in the doors so early into June, and I quite like some of the names that they look to be signing at the moment. So they look like they're trying to get a bit of a squad together and make a push for playoffs next season. Of course, they were the only side really left in the championship come the end of the season with nothing to play for. So I'm sure they'll be looking to make a push at it next season. Obviously, Dunfermline coming back up from League One will be another difficult task as well. And of course, Annan, we know about their cup run last season, had a few upsets last time around. So hopefully we avoid any upsets with them this season. Of course, Albion Rovers as well, just relegated from League Two. So a few tricky ties in there. But I mean, we've got to be honest, we've got to still make sure we get through that. But as you say, a few competitive ties that will give us good tasks and good games ahead of the Premiership season. So hopefully we can use that to our benefit, get good performances in, get good results in, get through to the top of the group, and use it as good preparation ahead of the Premiership season.
Absolutely. And Kieran, before we even get to those games, we've also got some friendlies as well. Only two announced so far, but I gather there is going to be more. We're heading to Belfast on the first weekend or the second weekend or the second week in July rather to play Glentoran and Linfield. Interesting weekend to have chosen if you know your Northern Irish history, but there you go. And it should be an interesting week of games. Kieran, obviously a couple of very good sides there from the Irish Premier League, so it should be a good test there, you'd imagine.
Definitely. It's one of those leagues you don't really hear much about is the Irish League, but they do have some good quality players. They've seen a couple of players that we've snagged from them personally ourselves. Obviously Brad Lyons coming from the Irish League, and there's like a few others whose names are completely escaping me. But it's a league that's got good players in it. It's a Premier League for a reason. And it'll be a really good warm up because we've seen just how beneficial like the preseason, it's sort of that season just there was because I think we went undefeated in that preseason, and then we've had a decent string of performances in the first few weeks. Of course, the results weren't that good, but the hard fought draw for the first game against Dundee United kind of sparked a wee bit of inspiration in myself. I'm not sure if I've used to felt the same by it, but then obviously we had the very very demoralizing hard run of games after that, which kind of sent us on a bit of a downward spiral. But preseason games are really important, and I'd say these are two really good teams that they've picked out to try and test ourselves against.
Absolutely. So let's hope that we can get a good set of fans over there and have a couple of good friendlies to kick us off. And then obviously we've got those cup games as well, which we'll probably talk about in a bit more detail over the next couple of weeks. But I think that'll do is for the first episode back. We'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, over the next few weeks with more signings and more contract renewals and whatever else that goes on in the weird and wonderful world of Kilmarnock FC. So we'll be back then. But in the meantime, I'm sure we'll have some stuff coming out from the guys at Forever and Ever and the Kelly View podcast. So make sure you check out them as well. Loads of good stuff going on there, and we'll be back in the commentary box as well for the first home game of the League Cup campaign. So we'll plug that a bit closer to the time as well. You'll be able to join us all, and you can have an hour and a half straight of this kind of nonsense talk on a match day. So we'll plug that when the time comes. But hopefully everyone enjoyed the first episode back. You can also watch us on YouTube and on Spotify as well for your listening pleasure in the car, out walking or running or whatever you're doing, doing the ironing or anything. Then you can listen then as well. But thanks to Kieran and Andrew for joining me as always, and hopefully we'll have you back in the next week or so, and we'll be back with you then. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you then.